and welcome to Bad Ideas, the show where we look at misfires, mistakes, and miscalculations from all throughout history.
I'm Tony Southcott.
And I'm Albert Berg, and today's episode is brought to you by our feature patron, Heather WZZZ. I don't know how to pronounce that, Tony, but we thank you anyway for being a patron, Heather. And my bad idea for this week is the Sinclair C5. The Sinclair C5 was named after Clive Sinclair. And it's important to remember that when this product comes on the market in 1985, the year of my birth, by the way, Tony, Clive Sinclair had nothing left to prove to anyone. His companies, Sinclair Radionics and Sinclair Research, had helped revolutionize the world of technology. He started out by building what were advertised as the world's smallest radios and would go on to produce the world's first pocket calculator that was battery-powered called the Sinclair Executive and one of the first pocket televisions ever. But his biggest claim to fame was the ZX80, which was a personal computer that went on the market in 1980 for the then unheard-of price of £99. And to put that in perspective, most computers of the time sold for 5 times that much.
That is pretty ridiculous.
It's also important to remember that because it cost £99, the ZX80 was one of the worst computers on the market at the time. I've recently watched a review of this particular personal computer, and it has corners cut all over the place. The keyboard is terrible. There's no sound. Every time you push a key, the screen goes blank. But it was £99. And that made it a big seller in England because that was so cheap that a lot of people thought, maybe I can afford one of these personal computer things. And the ZX80 really became a big factor in personal computing, especially in England.
It reminds me whenever I bought one of those Raspberry Pis and realized I don't know anything about Linux.
Well, I think that's a little different, right? Like, that's not the fault of the Raspberry Pi.
No, that's a personal problem, straight up.
In 1983, Clive Sinclair's achievements earned him a knighthood. He became Sir Clive Sinclair because of his amazing advancements in electronics and technology. That was how big of a deal this guy was. And he wasn't done. He was not done changing the world, Tony, because now Sir Clive Sinclair thought to himself, I've altered the world of the computer. I've created the world's first low-cost personal computer, and now I'm going to do the same for automobiles.
He's a very ambitious man.
He was very ambitious, and despite the fact that we're going to be talking about a failure of his, I don't want to dunk on this guy too much because he built a company up from the ground making radios and then making pocket televisions and eventually making computers. And even though these were all cheap things, this guy doesn't seem like an idiot. He had some kind of a vision.
He's not malicious either. It's not Keith Raniere from last week.
No, he's just trying to build a product and bring it to market. And hey, it doesn't cost you that much. And because it doesn't cost you that much, it's not that good. Now, Clive Sinclair had been interested in producing some kind of vehicle for a long time. Even back in the early days in the 1950s when he was making tiny personalized radios, he was dreaming of making an electric car. And he really saw electric power as an area of untapped potential. So he commissioned a design for something like an electric scooter as early as 1970. But because he got so successful with his calculator, that attention that he was paying to some kind of electric vehicle got diverted, and then he had the success with the ZX80, and so it's only at 1980 into 1983 where he really has the time and the attention to devote back into this dream of his to make a small electric vehicle. Now, this vehicle that we're going to be talking about, what will eventually be called the Sinclair C5, even in its earliest iterations, was never supposed to be a replacement for a full-size car. Instead, Sinclair was intending to target a demographic who were buying mopeds at the time.
I was going to say, from the looks of this thing, it actually looks a lot like a moped, but a little lower design.
It's lower to the ground. It has 3 wheels instead of 2. It looks nicer, right? Like there's some molding and things around the body. It looks kind of like a shoe in almost all of its incarnations that I was able to find, from basically design to completion. But it's a little bit nicer. It's going to be maybe cheaper. It's going to be better for the environment, right? Because your moped is going around like, right? If you're kind of a hippie type in the holding over from the 1970s, maybe you're thinking about your impact on the environment, and Sinclair says, hey, here's a plug-and-play thing. Well, you can plug it in. You'll just go down to the grocery store. He's targeting sort of moms and wives at the time who apparently in England, not all women had driver's licenses. So Sinclair thinks, okay, these people, they just want to make little short trips to the grocery store, maybe hop over to their friend's house. They can use this Sinclair C5. Families that want to have a little bit extra mobility but don't want to spend the money on an entire car, this is the solution for them. We're going to have this cheap little thing that people can just putter around town on. His initial goal for this is that it'll have 30 miles of range and it'll have a top speed of 30 miles an hour. And the reason that he thought that that would be enough was because they did surveys of people who owned mopeds at the time and found out that they traveled about 6 miles per trip with their moped. They weren't making long cross-country journeys, so this was supposed to target that demographic. I already mentioned the basic design of this thing kind of looked like a shoe. It was a tricycle design with 3 wheels underneath of this shoe shape. The driver sits very low to the ground, and maybe the weirdest design choice is that instead of a steering wheel, there's a pair of handlebars that sit under your legs that you steer with.
It just sounds so uncomfortable.
Apparently, it was a better choice than sticking a steering wheel on top and maybe having that crush you into the car if something happened. At least it was the safer choice of the tiny car that was far below the vision line of most drivers on the road and could only go 30 miles an hour at best.
Looking at the handles, it's more like where your hands would rest. For some reason, I was imagining between your legs, so you had to sit all really weird and hunched forward.
No, I'm sorry. So you're sitting basically on the ground. Let's imagine that, right, with your back straight up, and your hands rest kind of there. If your legs are bent up a little bit, they're underneath, like your thighs, is where the handlebars come out on either side. There'll be a picture on the YouTube video for those of you who are confused.
YouTube.com/badideas.
Indeed. Now, in true Sinclair design philosophy, he decides not to invest a lot of time researching battery technology. Battery technology at the time is not great, but Sinclair knows that if he starts to try to develop a better battery, it's going to sink a lot of money in developing this project. So instead, he just completely ignores new battery stuff. He says, no, we're just going to use what people are using right now. There's some electric vehicles going around England right now. There was a specific kind of milk truck that used electric power for some reason. I didn't dig too far into that, but he says, we've got some technology. It's being used. We're just going to take off-the-shelf components and then integrate that into our vehicle.
It's a very Nintendo-style concept.
Yeah, except Nintendo usually works out okay.
Well, every other console anyway.
So, when the technical snarls were worked out, Sinclair turned the vehicle, which was then called the C1, over to Ogle Design to help to turn it into an actual product. But according to Tony Wood Rogers, one of the lead engineers on the project, Ogle Design immediately started pointing out flaws in the concept. Wood Rogers said, quote, "For 12 months, all they did was come up with reasons why it wouldn't work. They said it wasn't fast enough, that people would get wet when it rained, that the battery wasn't good enough. They seemed to spend time proving it wouldn't work. Eventually, they killed it." End quote.
It sounds like they had pretty valid reasons for doing so, especially whenever they probably could have found a small internal combustion engine that would have gotten 30 miles per gallon for something so light.
You would think so, and the reason that combustion engines have traditionally overshadowed the electric vehicle market is because of how much more efficient they are and how much better range that they have. We're finally working out some of those problems now in like 2019, but
yeah, and it takes an entire battery bank that covers the bottom part of a car entirely.
Right.
So it's like there are still some things that are a bit rough about it, but it's gotten so much better.
So at the time, they're doing the best that they can. I don't know why Sinclair was fixated on electric, Tony, except that I think maybe in his mind it just felt more futuristic. But this is where they're going. This is the direction he's going in. But after Ogle Design shot the project down, Sinclair's dreams of a cheap electric vehicle seemed to be dead in the water. But then, in 1983, something changed that would put the concept of a small, three-wheeled electric vehicle back into the realm of possibility. The British government, under pressure from Raleigh Bicycle Company, who was intending to introduce an electric bicycle in the UK, changed the regulations in the traffic code so that it did not require a license to buy an electric-powered vehicle that had 2 or 3 wheels and would travel less than 15 miles per hour. It also had to be fitted with pedals. They were called, quote, electrically assisted vehicles. And all of a sudden, there's this massive legal loophole that's opened up that just essentially draws a circle right around the Sinclair C5. It already has all of these features. It already has pedals. It's already an electric vehicle. They can make it go less than 15 miles per hour.
Yeah, I was going to say that limitations of slowing it down seem a lot harder than speeding it up.
Exactly. And so Sinclair pulls all of his files out. He makes the changes he needs to make to fit the regulations. He had to change the motor so that it was smaller. And this is another one of those situations where the legend about it is not as fun as the facts, Tony. The legend says that this thing ran on a washing machine motor, but it was in fact an electric fan motor that would be used in a radiator in a truck. So I don't know that one is less impressive than the other, but washing machine motor just sounds dumber.
I mean, it kind of looks like it could have been a washing machine at some point in its life.
It does, for sure.
I'm just like wandering through the Google image search as you tell me about it, just imagining driving it. The best one is whenever it's all the people in Mario Kart outfits in these things.
I forgot about that one. That one's a good one. We'll have to put that up somewhere. I don't know. Maybe on our Twitter. Now, remember, Sinclair is targeting this market of housewives and families that need extra transportation but don't want to pay full price for a new car. He believes that this market will reveal itself. He's dead certain that there is a market out here for the Sinclair C5, as it will become called, but he doesn't actually do any market research. He just charges ahead making this vehicle, assuming that because he's had a lot of success with a cheap version of an expensive product like the ZX80, that he can duplicate that with another cheap version of another expensive product in the automotive world. With the basic design completed and the product 8 weeks away from production, Sinclair hired designer Gus Desbarat, I think, or Desbarats. I don't know how to spell this man's name. What I do know is that Gus had just graduated from design school, and his first job was to put the finishing touches on the Sinclair C5. Now, Gus gets to Sinclair Vehicles headquarters and takes one look at the C5 and just, hangs his head in shame and frustration. This guy had been expecting to see a full-scale electric car, and instead he's looking at essentially an electric go-kart tricycle with pedals, no mirrors, no speed or range indicators, and maybe most importantly, no way to keep the driver dry in England's legendarily foul weather. Not only was there no way to keep the driver dry, the car wasn't even waterproof.
So you couldn't take it out in the rain. It wasn't just that you would get wet, it was that it wouldn't work.
I mean, it probably could get a rain on it. Like, I don't know that it's going to immediately stop in a small shower, but it's not designed to be able to keep the rain out. If water gets in there, it's just going to mess up the motor. And with this thing as low to the ground as it is, who knows what kind of puddles you're going to be going through? Lots of problems.
Yeah, this thing looks like it would be horrible if you hit any sort of pothole. Like 2 inches down and you might end up rolling the thing.
De Barat said that he would need at least 4 months to get the Sinclair C5 into working order, but the timeline was set, and so he had to do what he could in 8 weeks. A job he later described as, quote, converting an ugly, pointless device into a prettier, safer, and more usable pointless device, end quote. Sinclair had originally planned to have the C5 produced at the DeLorean plants in Ireland, but when that plant folded because of its own bad ideas, which, by the way, you can go listen to our episode on, he turned to the Hoover Company instead. And it's...
Like the vacuum company?
Yes. I am amazed and delighted by the fact that this was a vehicle that could be produced either by a vehicle production company like DeLorean or an appliance production company like Hoover.
It's like, I suppose the engines are probably about the same size.
Well, at least according to rumor, they were.
Yeah. I don't know, if you get a truck-sized vacuum cleaner, you're probably going to be pulling up carpet.
Sinclair's optimism for his little car was boundless, and he worked hard to make sure the production process was as streamlined as possible, so as to be able to keep up with the flood of orders he was sure would come rolling in once the C5 hit the market. He pitched the Hoover manufacturing plant potential numbers of 200,000 units sold the first year and 500,000 the second year.
Some lofty promises. How expensive was this thing again?
It was going to be 399 pounds.
You know what? That's still not a... Like, even in 1980s money, put that up to like $800 or whatever. For a way to get around, that's not the worst in the world. If they would have had a few minor things covering it up, like for the rain and everything else, that could have been pretty viable.
I think you're multiplying by about 4 to get to 1980s money, so we're looking at between 12 and 1,500 pounds. I keep wanting to say dollars. They fluctuate on how closely they match, but they're not usually way off. Sadly, Sinclair's success was not to be. The very idea of the Sinclair C5 inspired intense criticism from almost everyone who wasn't named Sir Clive Sinclair. An article published in The Economist at the time summed up the general sentiments well in a single sentence. Quote, can a man who has made a fortune out of calculators and computers and could double it on flat-screen televisions be that crazy? End quote. Apparently he could, and the launch proceeded as planned, with glossy brochures proclaiming the wonders of the Sinclair C5 and trumpeting the downfall of the tyranny of big vehicle manufacturers. But things went badly basically from the start. A press demonstration of the vehicles highlighted a myriad of problems. The batteries went flat in minutes. The vehicles couldn't handle hills. Some of them simply didn't work. Worse, they sat so low to the ground that the drivers were at eye level with the exhaust pipes of almost every other vehicle on the road. But maybe the most important flaw with the C5 was that you looked really, really stupid when you were driving one.
Yeah, but you could look really cool if it couldn't handle a hill and you grapple hooked onto somebody else to drag you up.
The Sunday Times described the C5 as, quote, a Formula One bath chair and, quote, motorized plastic lozenge, end quote.
Back when journalism was journalism.
Customers weren't any more excited than the journalists. At the vehicle's launch, Sinclair expected to sell out of his inventory of 2,700 C5s, but instead sold fewer than 200. Sales picked up a little when mail orders started coming in, but most people buying the Sinclair seemed to be interested in the novelty of the thing, rather than expecting to actually use it around town. and many of the vehicles were returned when customers discovered for themselves its inability to cope with hills. Even worse, many accessories that one might consider essential for a vehicle, like mirrors, indicator lights, and the high-vis mast, which would help make the tiny vehicle more visible in traffic, were sold as separate add-ons to keep the price under the target of £399.
So, like, basically you're having to put reflectors on this thing like it's a tricycle.
The high-vis mast was the one that really blew me away, that they thought, this thing is about 2 feet high, and if you get run over, you're definitely going to die, but let's make the stick that lets people see you a little better optional.
It's been a ride. Probably a better ride than the actual vehicle.
The failure was devastating, and the company that Sir Clive Sinclair had created to produce the C5 soon went into receivership, which is like bankruptcy if you don't know what receivership is, with what remained of the C5s being sold off in bulk at a price of £75 each.
I would buy one at £75. Just to have, I would buy that now.
You know what the weird thing is, Tony? Now that this thing is a failure and a flop, lots and lots of people are actually really interested in it. It's become a collector's item. People actually collect these so that they can resell them at a higher price later because of the novelty of how the vehicle looks and how unusual it is in its sort of place in history. There have been Sinclair C5s that were modified to travel at 150 miles an hour.
Is that the one that has the literal jet on it?
I'm not sure if that's the same one or not, but they also have one that has a jet on it, Tony. Maybe the same one.
I feel like that could definitely be it, but if you took off in that thing, it would be your last ride for sure.
Apparently somebody did it and survived, although they did say, man, if anything went bad at all, I would have been dead. People are really into these things, and I think one of the failures that was proposed, one of the reasons that this didn't work out, was because Clive Sinclair proposed this as a working man's vehicle, that it was just another way to get to the store, instead of this very unique, maybe high-end novelty for people who were looking for something a little bit interesting, because I believe Prince Harry and whatever the other prince's name was, they bought one to motor around the castle grounds before they had their driver's licenses. Arthur C. Clarke bought one because, it's futuristic and electric and it seems cool. And they did a bad job of advertising, hey, this is cool and weird and different, and focused in on this demographic of just sort of the everyman. And the everyman probably already had a bike that they just drove.
Yeah. And I would have been advertising like, hey, you don't need a license for this. Your younger kids could make a quick errand to the store for you. Or like, are you tired of taking them all these places? Like, just buy them one of these. Like, there's so many different ways they could have taken this to make it actually viable if it could go up hills.
Gus de Barat also pointed out later that he thought Sinclair's biggest blind spot was that he had the success in the computer world, but that computers were so new that people didn't really have a comparison point. So when he went up against automobiles, he used the same tactics, but everybody had grown up with automobiles. Everybody knew what a car was supposed to be. Whereas in 1980, people really weren't sure what a computer was supposed to be. So he could get away with the ZX80, whereas here he's competing and saying this is like a car, and people are looking at it and saying, but no, it's not.
It's like you just got out of the 70s where you had some of the best muscle cars ever. That is not a car.
Well, there were some bad cars too. I mean they're going to try again with the Yugo. Again, another episode of Bad Ideas that we've already done.
The first episode.
The very first one that we published, that's true. They're going to try again, and I would argue the Yugo had more success than this one. But at least
it definitely lasted a lot longer, sold more units.
Yes, and the initial offering was at least successful. They just couldn't weather the bad publicity. The interesting thing is Sir Clive Sinclair never really got the transportation bug out of his blood. In 1992, he produced an electric bike called the Zyke, which also failed commercially. And in the mid-2000s, he produced a folding bike concept called the A-Bike. And if you Google a picture of that thing, it looks just unstable. Like the wheels are way too small, in my opinion, for anything other than very flat sidewalks with no potholes.
How do you spell that? Like
the A-Bike, it's A-Bike.
Okay, A-Bike. That's why I was getting it on Google.
I'm looking for a bike. Google
Yes.
has 3 million results in your area.
Yeah, that is some weird, tiny little wheels. That does not look stable.
It folds up small, so it has that going for it. But at that point, you might as well just get a Razor scooter.
Yeah, pretty much. Those are rollerblade wheels.
Yep. I think Sir Clyde's biggest problem with his projects, he is still alive, by the way, as far as I could tell from his Wikipedia page anyway. I think his biggest failure was just that he was trying to do this before the technology was there to support it. He wanted this electric revolution. He saw that there was a potential for small electric vehicles to be something. He just didn't quite have the technology to make it happen and didn't have or want to spend the capital on improving the batteries to the place where they needed to be improved.
That and the whole thing that where if you would have put a lid on it, you might have had a little more success in the UK. I feel like if you would have put these out in California or something like that, like big flat area, lots of sun, he might have had more success too.
Well, if you look at the Zyke, it's almost exactly the same design as the Razor electric riding scooter that they have. This design is still around. I actually rode one when we went to PAX South. It wasn't a Zyke, but it might as well have been. It's just that the technology had to catch up.
Yeah, and those things actually have pretty legitimately long battery life and everything now, too.
Yep. You just gotta wait for the tech to come around. Sorry,
Yep.
Sir Roger. You did good with the ZX80. You're still trying with those weird vehicles to get people around. Maybe you'll have a hit. You're only 78. Give it another swing.
You think whenever he sees those scooters all over the place in like New York and I'm assuming other cities in the UK and everything that he's like, I could have had that.
You know what?
They stole my
Hopefully he
idea.
says, well, somebody made it work. It just wasn't me.
He's probably thinking somebody's going to break their neck on those things like everybody who sees them.
Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you have bad ideas that you'd like us to cover, we would love for you to send them in to badideasshow@gmail.com, or you can leave them in the YouTube comments of the video if you're watching over on YouTube. If you want to help support the program, go over to patreon.com/humanechoes and become a member for lots of cool stuff. All of our other YouTube videos from our other channels are up there, usually pretty early compared to when they go out to the public. The bonus podcast is up there. It's a lot of great stuff, and you really help us keep the wheels turning. Hopefully better than the wheels on the Sinclair C5 turned. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye, everybody.